Doug, when you talk about interpersonal confidence, what do you really mean by that?
Okay, so when the interpersonal confidence is part of the confidence component of the mental toughness concept. And in an earlier discussion, we spoke about confidence and abilities. In a sense, this is still talking about confidence and abilities, but it's a very specific set of abilities. When we spoke earlier, we were talking about skills, knowledge, and experiences. What we're talking about here is a very specific set of skills, and that's our ability, the extent to which mentally we are comfortable about engaging with other people. Now, if we're comfortable about engaging with other people and can do it, without worrying about it too much, it means that we can walk into a room full of strangers and walk up to some people and start a conversation. We can ask people questions. More importantly, we can ask the stupid question. I said something that holds a lot of people back. They don't
Mm.
like asking a question because people think, "Oh, you didn't know that? Oh, you must be stupid." It doesn't matter. Somebody with a lot of interpersonal confidence simply wants to know the answer. The
Right.
minute they've got the answer, they're no longer stupid. And it's also about the extent to which you're prepared to influence others as much as they do you. And that can include being assertive and standing your ground when needed. So you're also likely to get noticed in meetings. At the other end of the scale, people will be very wary about engaging with other people. They'll find it a frightening uh, concept, a very uncomfortable concept. So they run the risk of being invisible if they're in a meeting. They never speak up, so nobody knows, nobody can remember them being there. If they walk into that room full of strangers, they tend to walk around the outside of the room and wait for somebody to approach them. And if nobody approaches them, nobody knew they were there. So this aspect of confidence is quite important. Well, not quite important, very important, because the one thing we do know is there's hardly anything you can accomplish in life without engaging with other people. So to be comfortable about engaging with other people is very, very important.
I was about to bring that point up if you hadn't, that, none of us achieve anything on our own, really, do we? We have to engage with other people. Success is a team sport, isn't it? We just can't really achieve very much on our own. And this is probably my lowest score every time I've taken the mental toughness assessment. My interpersonal confidence, people assume, would be very high, and it's not at all. So people are very surprised that I'm actually very shy. And networking events, walking into a room full of strangers is awful for me. And I do it all the time. It doesn't get any easier. If I'm invited, which I often am, to an awards dinner or something, and maybe I'm speaking at or hosting, and I walk into a room of 300 people, I'll be in my bedroom trying to delay it as long
Mm.
as I possibly can, because the awkwardness of going into a room and sort of looking for a familiar face. And of course, I probably know one or two people who have invited me to be there. And I won't even go into a pub to meet somebody on my own. Still, I will try and meet somebody outside the pub. It's just so weird. I am a shy person who does not want to stand out from the crowd. I like to be the observer and the spectator rather than the person who people are looking at. But then I stand on stage and talk, and I was on TV for a long time. I'm a weird, weird mix of sort of wanting a bit of attention but hating the attention. I
Yeah, but what you're describing there is, I think it's very valuable in the context of everything we talk about on these sessions, is that we tend to focus on mental toughness, and that's one aspect of the way the way we deal with the world. But there are other aspects that impact on our behavior. And one of the big ones is our interests. So what we know is, yes, people can be shy, they can be comparatively introverted, but they also have interests. And if they are really interested in something, they will talk freely about it. Suddenly, a lot of, that blanket they've got over their heads suddenly disappears. one of the best examples is somebody you and I know very well, and that's Professor Clough. I mean, um, he's the developer of the 4Cs concept. By his own admission, he would describe himself as an introvert, quite a shy individual. He also has a passion for railways. Right? He has a model railway set in his garden, which he opens every year to the public for fundraising for charity. I guarantee that if you ask Peter to walk into a room full of strangers and stand up and talk about the history of the railways, he would enthrall them, and there'd be
Right.
absolutely no issue about him standing up. So it can be connected to, the other things that, press your button as well. And that's possibly what's happening with you there.
Yeah,
Kate.
so that's, yes, I think you've got it there actually. I could talk about mental toughness all day long. So I don't want you to look at me and I don't want everyone to stare at me, but if I'm in my element talking about the thing I love,
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of, it's okay. It's weird, isn't it?
yeah. The advantage of having a comparatively low level of interpersonal confidence is you tend to be a better listener, largely because you're not going to be dominating the discussion, so you tend to listen to people.
Yeah, that would say was true for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is a big advantage because you often go out of a discussion or a meeting or a group knowing more about what happened in that group than anybody else in the group.
Well, as they say, the person with the power in any conversation is the person listening, not the person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And of course, the downside of having too much interpersonal confidence is you tend to dominate, you don't allow other people to enter the conversations, and sometimes to the extent of people being described as verbal bullies because they're capable of using the gift of the gab to shut people down. So it's, there are advantages and disadvantages right along that spectrum.
And in terms of you, how would you describe yourself interpersonally?
Well, I would describe myself now as interpersonally confident. And I'm and I wasn't always this way, but even to the point if I will walk into a room full of strangers and I'm quite comfortable about initiating conversations. I mean, one of the things you don't know about me is I'm a music fanatic. I'm a blues music fanatic, so I tend to go to blues events, and sometimes I have to go on my own because can't always get my friends to go with me. But I'm very comfortable about walking into a blues event and striking up a conversation with people. Maybe that's a special example because I know what to talk about,
Mm.
and I know that if I start talking about a particular musician that I've seen, in next to no time, people are clustered around you and saying, "So you saw him? Where did you see him?" That
Yeah, yeah.
sort of stuff. But you kind of learn how to engage with people. I had a very good, well, she's still a very good friend, who was appointed HR director for a company that was a client of ours. And she's a very good HR director and a very good HR director because she was good at listening. So what she wasn't the most assertive of people, but she got appointed to the board. And she came to see me because she was really nervous. She said, they have board meetings and everybody sits around in a board meeting and they spout what they know. They express an opinion. And that's not me. I've never done that. And I'm beginning to worry that they think if I'm not saying anything, not contributing, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I said, well, you don't you don't have to spout. You don't have to throw information on the table. Why don't you start doing just asking questions? So when somebody says something about an operational side of the business, why don't you just ask, what was the implications for staff? What's the implications for people who are going to have to manage that new operation?
Mm.
Just ask questions. You can safely ask questions because you're listening. You know what questions you should be asked. And it's easier to ask a question than it is to pretend you know something and you're going to drop a pearl of wisdom on the table. About 3 months later, she came to see me. It's fantastic. Says, my position on the board has changed completely. Everybody thinks I'm a fabulous expert. And says, and all I'm doing is asking questions.
Yeah.
And this is, in the last board meeting, one of the other directors turned to her and said, how come you know so much about what we do? She didn't.
Isn't that such a brilliant tip for everybody? That
Yeah.
if in doubt, just keep asking questions. Yeah.
Well, it's about engagement. It's about connecting with people. It's not about telling people. Everybody thinks if I've got to go and meet some people, I've got to be telling jokes or I've got to be telling the really interesting stories. It's not, that's one aspect of engagement. There's a lot of others.
Yeah. Thank you. You and I can talk about this stuff all day long, but we love to educate and help to get people engaged in the mental toughness concept. And obviously AQR have the mental toughness assessment, which I know you're very keen for people to engage with. So somewhere around this page will be a link for people to find out more. Thank you, Doug.